ancestorhood, to spirit, and to rebirth. This is the cycle of life. And while much of this information has been lost, has been stolen, has been distorted, there are occasions when we can get glimpses of this knowledge. And I cite, for example, the book Spirit of Intimacy, written by Sambofu Somé, the wife of Malidoma Somé, who's from Burkina Faso. And she talks about a ritual that they have within their community, a ritual called the hearing ritual, where when a woman is pregnant, she goes to see a priest. And a priest engages this pregnant woman in this ritual that is designed to allow the mother to communicate with the spirit of the ancestor that is in her womb. And through this ritual, the mother not only communicates with this ancestor in her womb, but she understands, she knows who that ancestor is, that is, who is now coming back through her to be born into the community to continue the work that they left undone. So knowing who is coming back means that you know who this person is. You know what their destiny is in life. You know what name to give this child. So that when this child is born, there are other components of this ritual. So when this child is born, you take that object that was the object that belonged to the ancestor that they have come back as, and you bury that object at a specific location. And when that child reaches a certain age, 13 or 14, that child is to go to find that object that was buried. And when that child retrieves that object, it is confirmation that that ancestor has returned. This is a ritual that has been going on for thousands of years. It means that these Africans in Burkina Faso understand aspects of life and death and rebirth that we have forgotten or have not been allowed to understand. What's also interesting is if you read her husband's book, Malidoma Somé's book, his first book, Of Water and the Spirit, he talks about this spiritual relationship that existed between his father, who was the chief priest of his village, and other priests who worked with him. Wonderful, fascinating account of African spirituality and how Africans developed individuals and community based on their understanding of who they were. An important part of this book is the story of French priests coming into the village, stealing children, taking the children away to monasteries where they were taught to forget their pagan ways, taught the Bible so that they can come back and convert their family members to Christianity. Malidoma as a child was stolen and spent a number of years in one of these monasteries. And he talked about, this book is about 10 years old, and he talked in this book about things that were happening in this monastery that I've been reading in newspapers for the last 3 or 4 months, about little boys being raped, little boys being molested by teachers of God. But the fascinating part of the story, he talks about when he leaves, when he escapes and goes back into his community and the choices that were given to him by the elders in his community as to what he needed to do in order to reinsert himself into the community, the rituals that he had to go through. So the book is fascinating because it deals with aspects of African spirituality that we've not had the opportunity to read about from an indigenous African people. So it's important for us to realize that we do have access to knowledge and information that can help us put the pieces of this puzzle together and understand who we are. Because one of the challenges in talking about religion and deconstructing the Bible is that people instinctively will draw back when you try to take away their Jesus. I mean, that's a natural reaction because everybody needs something to believe in. Everybody needs a foundation upon which to stand. But what I'm sharing with you, brothers and sisters, is that there are foundations out there. You have to take the initiative to begin to do the research, to read, to study, and begin to incorporate this information in your life. What's important about Africans who were enslaved here in America is that we were separated from these teachings, and we were not allowed to bring them over here or to practice. We were not allowed. Another important component is that Africans were enslaved in America for 200 years before their European enslavers decided to begin to teach enslaved Africans Christianity on a wholesale basis. What's important about this decision was that it came on the heels of insurrections. And as the Europeans became more and more afraid of insurrections, they decided that they needed to do something in order to keep those black folk docile and quiet. And so decisions were made to introduce them and to bring them into the Christian fold. There's a very important book that you all need to get your hands on and read. I was introduced to it by a minister in Washington, D.C., one of the few African-centered ministers in D.C., Reverend Willie Wilson, who wrote a book entitled Releasing the Power Within Through Spiritual Dynamics. And he references this effort that was made in 1842 to introduce enslaved Africans to Christianity. It was a book written by a preacher by the name of Reverend C.C. Jones, who in 1842 wrote a book entitled Oral Instructions, the Oral Religious Instructions of the Negroes in the United States. He documents in this book the fear of the white enslavers of insurrections and how Christianity can be used to contain them and keep them docile. And he literally met with ministers. He met with groups of enslavers to share this philosophy with them in order to maintain the status quo. And he outlined specific things, specific outcomes that could be expected by introducing your enslaved population to the Christian Bible. He said specifically, you would teach them through oral instructions, since they were not allowed to read, teach them through oral instructions that God ordained slavery for the heathen African. So they stress, and he specifically cited all of the passages in the Bible where slavery was justified by Moses, by God, by all of these personalities, so that the Africans could begin to see that, yeah, I'm supposed to be here because this is where God wants me to be. He said you could also use Christianity to teach the enslaved Africans that God ordained whites in America to be their slave masters. This was the purpose behind this indoctrination. And again, it took place on a wholesale level in this country in 1842. Another point that he made is that since God ordained whites to enslave Africans, then Christianity must not interfere with this divine relationship. All right? So you can begin to understand why the Klan and why other white Christians would burn a cross when they lynched black people, why there was always this relationship between the Bible and religious activities as they were killing other people. That to me seemed to be a violation of the very laws within this book. But the way that it was constructed was that God said it was all right for white folk to do whatever they wanted to do with these heathen Africans. Another important point that he used to sell this idea of introducing Christianity to enslaved Africans was that if you give Africans Sunday off, they don't have to work on Sunday, and you spend that day teaching them this information and allow them to congregate as a group, then they will learn to accept poverty, pain, and enslavement on earth because they know that they will get their reward in the next life. Huh? That's not an accident. This is a cold-blooded, calculated design in order to keep a group of people subservient to others. Reverend Jones said that the immediate benefits to the enslaver for introducing Christianity to the enslaved would be that one, slaves would be more obedient to their masters. Because God said, yeah, this is how the relationship is supposed to be. The Christian morality would reduce rebelliousness. It would create instead a cheerful motivation, industry, domestic virtue, submission to authority, and peaceful service to the master. All right? This was the intent. And did it work? Is it still working? We have to understand why. As more and more black ministers begin examining how Christianity has been used as a tool for white supremacists to control the destiny of African people throughout the world, and as they begin to examine the African presence within the Bible, we got to do more than just put a black face on former white faces. We got to do more than say, well, the Bible is a book about black people. We've got to study how this book was constructed in the very first place. Why those images were put there. And the power behind doing that. So let me just take a minute to deconstruct aspects of Christianity, to look at the symbolic aspects, and to extract this African essence so that we can begin to understand what we are seeing. If we examine the African origins of Christianity, we will see that the Holy Bible is literally Helios Biblios, or the Sun Book, the book of the sun. The book of the Son of God, and the book of the Sun, Helios, the sun, the symbol for the Creator. In Kemet, they had multiple names for the sun, the symbol of the Creator. Different names that express the power of the sun or the power of the Creator at different points in time during the day. When the sun was born in the morning in the east, it was called Kepra. When the sun reached its highest point at noon, it was called Ra, or Re. And when the sun descended in the evening, it was called a Tun, which meant the hit, which meant conceal, which meant that even though you can't see the Creator, you know that the creative force is still there. You know that it is all pervasive, and you know for a fact that it is going to be reborn tomorrow morning when it rises in the east as Kepra. So they had a profound way of codifying the Creator and the various manifestations of the Creator. Another important aspect of this is that sun rises in the east, it's Kepra, it reaches its highest point at noon, and that is when it is said that the sun or the Creator is on high. When the sun is at noon, that is when it is at its meridian, at its highest point. So the sun at noon, or God on high, is the most spiritually empowering time of day. All right? The most spiritually empowering time of day. And so the time before the Creator